Okay, everybody, welcome to the CALPADS Fall 2 training for assignment monitoring. One of the things that you should know about this particular training is that a lot of the content that is in here is redundant of the training that CTC did specifically for its monitoring authorities and credential analysts about the assignment monitoring process in CALPADS, CalSAAS. The difference is that now your CALPADS and SIS Student Information System counterparts are joining for this webinar, in addition to your district credential analysts. So what we're hoping is that we can kind of bridge the gap that sort of occurred during the assignment monitoring process. So with us today, I'm going to go ahead and introduce everybody just for the sake of time. Tara Bennett-Brown, she's an education programs consultant with the Educator Excellence and Equity Division. Kristen Cruz-Allen is the administrator for that same division. My name is Brandy Howdy. I'm an information technology specialist. I'm the senior business analyst for CALPADS, and I work for the Education Data Management Division. And from the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, we've got Erin Henderson. She's in the assignment monitoring program, joined by her colleague, Ann Harris, and Erin Skubal is also joining us today just to sort of listen in. All right, so what is assignment monitoring? So beginning 2019-20, all local educational agencies are required to monitor assignments for all staff and certificated positions annually. This is different than you were doing before because every district was monitored about once every 4 years. Now, all districts, including charter schools, are required to monitor assignments for the following categories. So you've got teachers, you've got pupil personnel services employees, and administrators. What's really important to understand about this is remember that you're capturing staff that are serving in positions requiring certification annually. And that is done through the California State Assignment Accountability System, otherwise known as CalSAAS. So I'm going to pass it over to Ann Harris.
Yeah. So we will briefly review some of the changes in legislation just to provide some background related to assignment monitoring. So Assembly Bill 1505 required that by July 1st of 2020, all teachers in charter schools, including contracted employees, must have passed the professional fitness screening by the Commission. And this can be done by obtaining a certificate. 1505 also requires teachers in charter schools to hold the CTC certificate, permit, or other document required for the teacher's certificated assignment. So previously there was flexibility in non-core curriculum courses, and core curriculum being English, math, history, social science, and science. Provisions in this bill make it so that educators that were already teaching in non-core courses in the 1920 school year are not required to vacate their position in which they're not appropriately assigned until July 1st of 2025. The law is really clear that these are misassignments and they will be counted as misassignments in the final reporting. Additionally, 1505 does not include service assignments such as the site administrators in assignment monitoring at charter schools. So like Brandy said, previously all schools were monitored on a 4-year cycle, which means that we would really not get a picture of the whole statewide misassignments until the end of that 4-year cycle. It was outlined in statute this way because of the huge amount of paperwork and staff time that traditional monitoring requires. So with the passage of AB 1219, the Commission, in collaboration with CDE, created a new system of assignment monitoring in CalSAAS. The purpose of CalSAAS is to monitor certificated assignments in California, and that satisfies the need for state and federal reporting requirements. The system automates the identification of questionable assignments, and that allows assignment monitoring of all certificated educator assignments to be completed annually. AB 1219 also requires monitoring of teaching assignments in charter schools. So we will go into the timeline in detail later in this presentation, but it's important to note that 1920 is considered a non-consequential year in that the data generated from CalSAAS for the 1920 school year will be used for informational purposes only, and it will not be publicly available online. However, commencing in the 2020-2021 school year, this upcoming monitoring cycle, the Commission will make annual misassignment and vacant position data publicly available online. It is important to note that there are provisions in various other sections of statute that make assignment of unqualified educators unlawful. So superintendents and credential analysts really have the responsibility to appropriately assign educators year-round. Please refer to the assignment monitoring orientation training module that's linked here, because it does have a lot of information related to the statutory and regulatory responsibilities.
Okay, so moving on to which data are used from CALPADS for purposes of assignment monitoring. We'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but in general, we have 4 files that are collected during our Fall 2 submission: staff demographics, staff assignments, course sections, and student course sections. Those files, after Fall 2 is certified, are sent over to the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Obviously, the staff assignment and staff demographics files contain the statewide educator ID, and that is the common link between CALPADS data and the staff and course data that you report, and the Commission on Teacher Credentialing credentials and authorizations for that specific educator. The CALPADS data are collected during our Fall 2 data submission. You can generally start submitting those data as early as the first Wednesday in October annually. This year it was October 7th. There is a deadline for submission of the Fall 2 data, which is March 5th, 2021 this year. So we are just a little over a month away from our Fall 2 submission deadline. What's important to understand is that the data that you're submitting is what was happening and occurring in your districts on Census Day, which is the first Wednesday in October annually. And again, this year it was on October 7th. So in terms of what's required in each of those separate files that I was talking about, so we've got several things. So for staff demographics and assignments are submitted for people that were employed in positions requiring certification. So what I mean by that is teaching positions, administrative services positions, and pupil and personnel services positions. So if you have any individuals that were serving in those positions, they should be reported for purposes of Fall 2. Okay, and this is, again, folks that were teaching, providing administrative services or pupil or personnel services on Census Day, which is October 7th. In addition, we ask you that you also report staff on leave, particularly if they are reported as teachers of record that are on leave on Census Day. Now, the courses that you're reporting are courses that were occurring during the academic term that was in session October 7th, 2020, and the teachers of record assigned to them. The reason I mentioned that it's the courses that occur during the academic term that is on October 7th is because some of you are off track on October 7th, or you have block schedules and certain courses don't occur on that exact day. If the course was scheduled during the term, the academic term that usually occurs in the fall on October 7th, then you want to go ahead and report those courses. The courses that we want you to report are courses for which students receive credit and or grades, courses that count towards instructional minutes for purposes of average daily attendance. And it also includes assignments for pull-out and push-in teachers. We always get lots of questions about, we have a class that kids come to after school, and it's music instruction. Are we required to report that teacher? And you have to ask yourself, does this student get credit for it, elective credit? Are they graded for it? Does it count towards attendance or part of their instructional minutes? And if the answer is yes, then that assignment should be reported. That course should be reported. Also, you are reporting the students enrolled in each of those courses occurring during the academic term that was in session on Census Day. The Fall 2 data that you submit to CALPADS is used for several reasons. So For the last couple of years, it has been used for federal reporting for ESSA on the following teacher categories. So ineffective teachers, out-of-field teachers, and inexperienced teachers. It has also historically been used for staff and course enrollment reports that we post publicly on DataQuest. Last year was the very first year, 2019-20, that districts submitted these data for purposes of submission to the California State Assignment Accountability System, otherwise known as CalSAAS. Okay, so it's now being used for assignment monitoring annually through CalSAAS. Okay, pass it over to CTC.
All right, so we'll just do an overview of basically how CalSAAS works. It works through the comparison of the CALPADS assignment data and the Commission's credential authorization data by the educator's seed. So the comparison occurs with the assignment data collected in CalPADS Fall 2 census date and the valid documents held by the educator on census date. After the questionable assignments are identified in CalSAAS, the LEA may review them and provide justification as to why the assignment was identified in the system. The LEA's monitoring authority is then able to review the justification provided by the LEA and either verify it and accept it or investigate it further. Finally, CTC's role is to collect assignment information at the end of the monitoring cycle and then finalize the data for reporting purposes. Displayed here is a general timeline for assignment monitoring. So in March, the Fall 2 data is certified. This data should be sent to CDE, from CDE to CTC in April. If it is sent later, then the timeline is adjusted accordingly. The Commission then prepares the data for the system, and we expect the exceptions to be generated in CalSAAS in late April. When exceptions are released in CalSAAS, they are available within the system for 90 calendar days. Users representing the LEA will have 60 calendar days to review and determine the exceptions, after which their initial review window will be closed. However, LEAs are still able to work on those exceptions that have been returned to them from their monitoring authority for the duration of the 90 days. So there is a little bit of back and forth there. Monitoring authorities have the ability to make the final determinations in the system, and they have access to the exceptions during the duration of the 90 calendar days. When the assignment monitoring cycle has concluded, then the Commission finalizes the data for reporting. And again, remember that the 2020-2021 monitoring cycle is consequential, and therefore the data will be publicly posted. So now we'll get into the exceptions that populate in CalSAAS and clarify what CalPADS data may have generated them. So first of all, let's define the word exception because it will be used a lot during this presentation. An exception is the result of the comparison between the educator's valid documents held on census date and the educator's assignments reported in CalPADS. So educators that did not hold an appropriate authorization for the assignment reported produce an exception in CalSAAS. Additionally, assignments that are vacant or have a substitute reported as a teacher of record will also trigger exceptions. Remember that these exceptions are questionable assignments. They're not necessarily misassignments because there may be other reasons to explain why an educator is appropriately authorized for the assignment. Exceptions can be worked in CalSAAS by the LEA and monitoring authority users reviewing and selecting the appropriate determination. And the determination is the method used to justify why the exception was identified in CalSAAS. Districts and counties have the opportunity to review the exceptions generated in the system and respond with an explanation, referred to as a determination. The final determination of exceptions is the responsibility of the monitoring authority. And this next piece is kind of a frequently asked question. So LEAs cannot resolve exceptions by modifying prior year data in CalPADS. Exceptions identified in CalSAAS must be worked within CalSAAS. So if an error in CALPADS reporting is identified through the assignment monitoring process in CalSAAS, then this should be resolved and then reported accurately in subsequent years. Here are some resources for you all. The Commission has created many useful CalSAAS resources, as well as information and training modules related to assignment monitoring in general. And so those are linked here. The CalSAAS resources include a thorough CalSAAS video training module. It includes information related to the various exception types and a complete list of the determination options, as well as other items that will be mentioned today. And additionally, here's a link to CDE's CALPAD code set document, which is really very helpful and provides descriptions for all of the state course codes, as well as the non-classroom based or support assignment codes. All right, so depicted here is an example of the all schools exception search screen in CalSAAS. So first of all, when the screen initially opens, it will display the name of the educator, the school, the status of the exception type, exception value, determination, and the last modified date and time. Then by clicking on the plus sign next to the educator's name, it will populate additional details related to the exception. So we'll discuss these items in detail throughout the presentation, but just here's a brief overview so you can see what we're referring to. So if you can notice in the details section, the seed is listed in the left-hand column. This is a seed of all nines, which has predetermined this exception as a vacancy. The exception type can either be the CalPADS code, the special education, or English learner. The exception value is the course, non-classroom based code, or the special education disability area that generated the exception. The determination is the justification associated to the exception. So this can either be predetermined based on what is reported in CalPADS, or it can be selected by the LEA and the monitoring authority user in CalSAAS during the monitoring process. The setting listed here refers to the type of setting that the assignment was reported in, and the class title and subject area are generated based on the CalPADS code name and general subject area.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to take it from here. So now we're going to go over the different exception types, starting with the CalPADS codes exception. And that was the example in that last slide. So CalPADS codes exceptions occur when the educator does not have the appropriate authorization based on the state course code or non-classroom based or support assignment code. So this can include general education assignments, career technical education assignments, and also those non-classroom based assignments, such as, those pupil personnel services credentials. So we're going to take a brief overview about which determination you should use in various circumstances, but there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that can change that. I'm going to point to some of those as we go through. And before we begin, I think it is really important to note that you should always, always, always confer with your monitoring authority if you have questions. They're really the ones that can help you through the process. If you are a district monitoring authority, you can actually ask your county for assistance if you need it, and that's in the law. So if, you can also go and ask your county office of education if you need help there. That's the chain of command here. I also kind of want to briefly note that we know a lot of districts have been reaching out to CDE for assignment related and exception related questions. And these poor ladies can't answer those questions. So please, please, please defer to your monitoring authority. Okay, so now that that is out of the way, you have the following information to help you make a determination for an exception type. This exception type. So you can identify the exception value, and that is on the exception report. You can use the CalPADS code description. You can use the educator's credential and their authorizations. any local assignment options the educator is on. And then you can also look at, the local course name and description. You may need to look in your local master course catalog for the course description, and monitoring authorities may request this to make sure that the course code selected does match what is in the system and what is actually being taught in real life. And also any middle school core assignments for the teacher are helpful as well. Okay, and then Anne went over this already, but we just want to show you again that the exception type will say CALPADS code, and that exception value will match the course that was selected in CALPADS. As well, that class title is going to match the course title in CALPADS. A lot of people have been asking for the decoder to figure out, what is authorized to teach what. But I really think that if you just draw your attention to that subject area right there, it's going to tell you basically 90% of what you need to know. So this is an English support title. We decided that this was an English class, and we coded it to, English credentials. I think that's how you're going to approach that when you're monitoring.
So, Erin, do you mind if I chime in here really quick? Because we're getting okay. So, for those of you on the CALPADS side of things, you don't have access to CalSAAS, and so you guys are asking specifically for a map from a CALPADS state course code to the credentials and authorizations that are required to teach that particular course. So even though you can't see what's in CalSAAS, and that little subject area line will generally tell you which authorization they should be looking for. Those are also listed in our valid code combinations document. So if you look at the content area of the course in the course group masters combo page, that also will give you a general indication of the subject area and the credential that the teacher should generally have. And that's just a really general rule. There are always exceptions to that. Okay, so where do you find the descriptions for that particular CALPADS exception? So this in particular is for my credential analysts. So there is a document, if you have not become intimately familiar with it, you need to. It's the CALPADS code sets document. And in this case, there are two specific code sets that you're looking at. You're looking at the course group state codes. Okay, these are the state course codes. What's really important to remember about this specific code set is that it's a historical representation of every course code that we've ever had. So there is a column at the end. You'll notice it's sort of truncated here, but there is a start date and an end date for every one of these codes. What you want to make sure you do is filter out any codes that have an end date, because that means we no longer use them. So when you're looking at this course group state code list and the descriptions for those codes, you want to make sure that you filter out any retired codes. The second code set that you're looking for in that document is the non-classroom based or support assignment code set. That code set is specifically for your non-instructional assignments. So administrative, pupil personnel services, as well as any teachers who are in non-instructional assignments. This document is available publicly. We did post it on a link in a previous slide. So make sure you bookmark this link so that you can reference this document pretty easily when you're looking at descriptions for each of these code values. Okay, so the next thing you want to do, and this is really important, this is why we wanted your curriculum and instruction folks to attend. So when you're looking at the description in CALPADS, we give you a very general, broad description of what that course and its content is. And the course title or the class title that's listed on the exception report reflects what the CALPADS code is. So what you have to do is you actually have to go and you have to compare that to your local course in your master course catalog to see if it actually fits that course description in CALPADS. If it doesn't, you probably don't have the right course code selected. Also, for your non-classroom based or support assignments, you want to make sure that the job description for that individual matches the assignment description that we've got in the non-classroom based or support assignment code set. Okay, you have to compare those two things to make sure that you are selecting the appropriate state course code or non-classroom based or support assignment code.
Okay, so now we're going to walk through some potential determinations for CALPADS Codes exceptions. And these are for teaching assignments specifically, and that means general education and career technical education settings here. Okay, so for teaching assignments, the first thing is you want to make sure the state course code is correct, and then you want to see if the teacher has the appropriate credential for the authorization. So this slide is basically if the educator has the appropriate authorization. So why is the exception being generated if the teacher seems to be appropriately authorized? Well, the first things to check here is to make sure that the authorizations were effective on census day, that that document hasn't lapsed or wasn't earned after census day. If it was actually, effective on census day, it could be an appropriate assignment, and we saw a few of these for a few reasons. Here's one of those caveats. We have a bunch of older credentials that were issued, back in the 70s. That's credential structure doesn't really match what's necessary, to be monitored in CalSAAS. Too many CalPads and CalSAAS here. Very difficult. Bear with me on that one. But anyway, so for those older documents, they're just going to show up as exceptions because, that's the only thing we can do with them, and we want these to be monitored. There's not very many of these left, but there's still a few kicking around. And then the other reason an appropriate assignment might be triggered is that, we had a decoder omission. We forgot about an authorization. During our maiden voyage, there were a few of these, and we think we identified most of them, but this could happen in the future. If you think that that's the case, definitely confer with that monitoring authority of yours and make sure that they're in agreement. And then if they were effective after census date, the determination could be a corrected misassignment. So this is if they renewed it shortly after census date, or if they earned the authorization after census date. The corrected misassignment, the window there is the day after census date to the day that monitoring begins. That's when it can be a corrected misassignment. All right, but what if the teacher does not hold the appropriate authorization? Well, there's a bunch of things that, could make this an appropriate authorization instead. An appropriate assignment. And one is if the teacher is on a local assignment option that wasn't reported in CalPads. If they were, you could determine it as a local assignment option, but we have another caveat here, and that caveat is that board authorization, if it's required for the local assignment option, must be in place on census date. Otherwise, if it's afterwards, it's a corrected misassignment. And another one is the teacher a long or short-term substitute in a vacant assignment? If they are, the determination is probably a vacancy. And then if the teacher is a non-credentialed teacher at a chartered school, it could be a 2019-20 charter teacher. However, there's a lot of caveats here. Basically, this is only for those non-core curriculum teaching assignments. That's what these are there for. And, we know you guys need some guidance on that. And we just finished another assignment school module if you're familiar with what those are, and it should be recorded and posted shortly. So stay tuned for that. Okay, and then there's more. If the teacher was in a, core setting, it could be a core determination. If the teacher's team teaching on the same course with another teacher who holds the appropriate authorization. And this one's really interesting. We just kind of found about this one through monitoring. So basically, team teaching means they're in the same classroom and one teacher is, in there but not providing the instruction for the assignment. It could be an appropriate assignment. Brandy, do you want to expand on that, or do you think I actually covered that?
Sure, I can cover it. So right now in CalPads, you have the ability, if there are multiple teachers assigned to a particular course section, what I mean by that is there are two primary teachers that are in the classroom at the same time. That's called team teaching. And then there's another that's job sharing. Job sharing is when the teachers are there on alternate days, generally not there at the same time. CalSAAS currently does not differentiate between those two things and take that into consideration in terms of determining whether the assignment is appropriate. We are talking about potential enhancements in CalSAAS for the future. But right now, you may get exceptions that generate based on the fact that you've got two teachers. One of them has the appropriate credential, the other one doesn't. And because CalSAAS doesn't look at both of those teachers together, it's generating these exceptions. But it's really probably relatively easy to clear that exception and make that determination specifically in CalSAAS at this point until we can work with CTC to modify the logic to take that into consideration.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, so in that situation, it could be an appropriate assignment. And then is the teacher on a short-term waiver? And these were pretty rare, but they happened. And if they are on a short-term waiver, which is a local level assignment decision, then you can determine it, the exception as a short-term waiver. And if no, it just is probably a misassignment. Okay, and then there is the another scenario, which is the state course code is not correct. And in many cases, this could be a CALPADS error. So, you know, I think Ann touched on this earlier. A lot of people have been asking if they can fix student information in CALPADS for the current year, what is actually in CalSAAS, and they cannot. That is not possible. We load our data one time and one time only for each monitoring cycle. However, in our training module, we do have a little embedded video that shows you how to pull all of your CalPADS exceptions. Everything that was determined as a CalPADS exception. So you can have a list of, you know, the things that you guys need to work on together to make sure that they're coded appropriately in the subsequent year. And another note on this is that you can only select this determination if the educator is actually appropriately assigned in the real life classroom, right? So, you know, last year we really wanted you guys for that non-consequential year to, you know, evaluate your reporting. But this next consequential year, we really are just looking for those misassignments. So if, you know, if it's a joint, you know, exception where, you know, when we've seen a bunch of these where the CalPADS code is incorrect, but also the educators aren't authorized for the curriculum they're teaching anyway, then you're going to mark that as a misassignment.
Okay, so now we will get into some simple scenarios with exceptions in non-instructional assignments. So here are some things to consider when reviewing administrative, pupil services, and non-instructional teaching exceptions. If the non-classroom based or support assignment code was reported correctly, then you'll want to check to see if the educator holds the appropriate authorization. And if they do, you'll want to check if it was effective on census date. If it was, then confer with your monitoring authority, because as Erin said, you know, there may be many reasons why it would be an appropriate assignment, including issues with our decoder and such. Now, if the educator did not hold the appropriate authorization on census date, but it was corrected after census date and prior to the monitoring in CalSAAS, then it's possible it may be a corrected misassignment. Now, if the educator in the administrative or pupil services assignment did not hold the appropriate authorizations, the next question could be, was the educator assigned based on a local assignment option that was not reported in CalPADS? If so, then the local assignment option determination could be appropriate. Otherwise, it could be a misassignment. So of course, remember what Erin just covered. Local assignment options have, you know, many requirements to consider, and you know, they need to be in place prior to the start of the assignment. Now, if the non-classroom based or support assignment code was not reported correctly, then this could be a CalPADS error. And again, CalPADS errors that are determined in CalSAAS should be addressed and then reported accurately in the subsequent reporting cycle.
There are several different assignment categories that we have codes for in CalPADS. So they generally are lumped into 3 separate categories, otherwise kind of known as job classifications in CalPADS. So we've got administrators, we've got pupil service assignments, and then we've also got some teacher assignments. And in the non-classroom based or support assignment code set, all of the codes that are there that apply to teachers are specifically, again, for non-instructional assignments. So things like peer mentoring or teacher induction program coordinators. those teachers that are on special assignment and they are not instructing students, that is when you would typically report a non-classroom based or support assignment for them. So again, they fall into those three categories. And generally, when you're thinking about the selection of the appropriate non-classroom based or support assignment code, you need to take into consideration what CTC is generally considering as the required credential. So if you select an administrative code, then they're generally going to require an administrative services credential, unless that administrator is on some sort of local assignment option. For our pupil services category, this is a very broad, overarching category that includes assignments that fall under the pupil personnel services credential, as you can see here at the bottom of this particular box. Under the PPS credential, you've got school psychologists, school counselors, social workers, child welfare and attendance, but there are also several other credentials that are required for those other assignments. So school nurses require a school nurse credential. There are different credentials for teacher librarians, clinical rehabilitative services, other health services, and speech and language pathologists. So you need to make sure that you select the appropriate non-classroom based or support assignment code, and that individual actually has the appropriate credential or is on some sort of local assignment option. Now, for our non-instructional teachers, these generally require a full teaching credential plus some sort of local assignment option. And in this case, there are generally two of them. Two local assignment options, one for program coordinator and one for staff developer.